welcome to week 10 of ACT Prep. Over the next month or so, we're leading into the winter cohort meeting. We'll be talking about the reading portion of the ACT. Before I talk about any strategies going into the reading portion, just want to do a quick overview of the reading portion itself. So it is the third test on the ACT exam. It comes after the math portion and before science. If that means anything to you. It is 35 minutes and it contains 4 passages, each with 10 questions each. So it's 35 minutes total with 40 questions total. So 35 minutes for 40 questions translates easily to less than 1 minute per question. So for your homework this week, the idea is to practice pacing yourself, so you only allow yourself about 10 minutes per passage. So your homework, the reading drill number 1 on page 274 of your Cracking the ACT textbook, just briefly covers one passage and it has 10 questions. So you work through them quickly, and it should just be designed to help you pace yourself, which is the most important thing on the exam, is to allow enough time to answer all the questions. The passages are always in the same order based on genre. Not really going to get into that yet, but just know we'll be talking about strategies on how to tackle not only each passage on the exam, but how to look at the reading test as a whole. One thing I didn't know going into the ACT is that you don't have to answer all the questions in order, so definitely don't make it harder on yourself than you have to. You can skip around, you don't have to read the whole passage, and you definitely don't have to read them all in order, so keep that in mind as you work through the exam. So the objective of the exam is to test your comprehension, which is a little difficult. It's different from what you learn in school because typically you have a lot more time to process the reading that you do and kind of formulate a response after that, but it's different on the ACT because you're not afforded the luxury of time, which is so important. The basic approach that your Cracking the ACT textbook provides, it's very simple, and it's designed, I think, to help you look at each passage individually. So use this basic approach to do the reading drill in your homework. So the basic approach that they provide is 1, preview the passage and the question, so very roughly read the little blurb that they have, read the questions that are offered, and kind of map those out based on what you feel is the most difficult. And then working the passage, which basically is just skimming and scanning the passage for kind of answers to the questions. So those steps 1 and step 2 kind of relate back to each other. So you should be like checking your work back and forth. Number 3, working the questions, which is looking at the questions based on the notes that you should have taken. You should be able to pick which questions are the easiest for you to answer, so you can kind of order them based on what's easiest for you. And then 4, finally, like work the answers. So one major strategy, they say, is to use the process of elimination. Each time you eliminate what you think is the wrong answer, your chances on getting the right answer are even greater. So definitely use that strategy as you work through the reading drill. One thing I do want to point out is to use your eyes more so than your brain. And that includes skimming and scanning the passage itself, but also looking at the questions and trying to pick out those leading words that's going to help you decide if that question is easy to answer or not. So one example of a hard question would be one that asks about the author's meaning. So for example, the author would think this based on what they wrote, and you're supposed to kind of guess or imply, I guess, based on the passage itself. So that one is not as obvious as one that says, or maybe references the passage itself. So it will say, in line 35, the author says this, and you can immediately go to that line and figure out the answer based on those references. So look for those questions that give you those leading words and those prompts to help you go back to the passage and read. In general, the ACT, your book actually is designed to help you tackle those questions and passages a lot quicker than you normally would. And so the idea is to map, what they call mapping the questions, looking for those leading words and kind of skimming and scanning, so you can quickly decide, the emphasis is quickly, quickly decide what passages are easiest for you. And that goes for skimming the passages as well as answering the questions. The more references to the passage, the easier the questions, or the easier answering the questions should be. So remember to use this basic approach. Again, the steps are 1, previewing the passage, 2, working the passage, 3, working the questions, and 4, finally working the answers. So you can put the exam questions and the passages in a personal order of difficulty, and that's one subject we'll be talking about later in the coming weeks. So as always, pace yourself on this exam, and good luck!